to another Growing in Grace podcast. We're glad that you're here with us today. And we'd like for you to like, share, subscribe. We're glad that you're growing with us, and we're glad to have the audience to be growing. And so we'd like for you to like, share, subscribe, let your family, your friends know about the Growing in Grace podcast. If you have a conversation you would like for us to speak about and have a conversation on, you may call me at 423-316-8011. Again, if you have a conversation that you'd like to hear us speak on, call me at 423-316-8011. Today we have a special guest with us today, Angelica Hutchinson. And today our conversation is about mental health challenges. Mental health challenges. And before she introduced herself, uh, I want to say this: mental health challenges. Everybody has mental health challenges at some point, and in some fashion or to some degree. And so there are varying degrees to mental health challenges, but we have them. We have them. And so at this time, Angelica Hutchinson, can you just tell us a little bit about yourself before we start the conversation?
Okay, so my name is Angelica Hutchinson. I am a sociologist. I study mental health. I'm a mental health advocate. And I have my own movement called The Process. And The Process is basically my mental health movement that I created a few years ago that highlights like trauma and abuse and mental health challenges that we face. And I talk about family issues. I talk about childhood trauma. I talk about all of that on my social media platforms.
I see. I see. Well, very good. Very
Yeah,
good. How old are you?
I'm 25.
25.
25.
Very good. Very good. And so, what started you on this journey of you wanting to address mental health issues? What started you on this journey?
It started because I was young. I started this movement like 5 years ago,
Mm-hmm.
and I was just having a conversation with my friend, and we were just talking about how young people face mental health challenges, and we wanted to figure out a way to reach more people our age. And now I reach a lot of people now, but in specifically speaking about my generation, I wanted to create a movement that talks about mental health
Mm-hmm.
and the challenges that we face.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so you wanted to create a movement to talk about mental health challenges, and what's driving you to want to do that? What's driving you to want to do that?
It's because I have my own mental health challenges,
Mm-hmm.
and I feel like mental health is stigmatized, and a
Mm-hmm.
lot, and specifically speaking about my community, the black community,
Mm-hmm.
I feel like it's very stigmatized, and I feel that we should create more spaces to talk about mental health, more safe spaces for people to just express themselves and the things that they go through,
Mm-hmm.
because it's important.
Yes.
Mental health.
Yeah. So, um, and so now you feel like what you're doing is giving people that space
Hmm.
to help them to not go to that bad place.
We do go through bad spaces with
Mm-hmm.
mental health, and I address that too. I talked about my journey with me battling dark thoughts when it comes to mental health. I talk about my own experiences,
Mm-hmm.
um, as far as my childhood trauma and the things that were hindering me and just keeping me down. I
Mm-hmm.
talk about all of that,
Mm-hmm.
because that's also a factor with mental health. There could be good days. You got good days with
Mm-hmm.
mental health,
Mm-hmm.
and then there's time where you have bad days, the dark times, and that's what I talk about on there. I talk about both sides. I talk about the good
Mm-hmm.
side of mental health, but I also talk about the dark side of mental
Okay.
health too.
Well, what would you like to talk about first today?
Um,
Which side would you like to talk about first today?
we can start with like the bad side of mental health.
Yeah, yeah, I like hope. So maybe we can go from bad to good.
Yeah, it's an upside to it. Yeah.
Yeah. So, all right. So, speak a little bit about the challenges that people are dealing with as it pertains to mental health that you're aware of.
So I think the time that people really experienced mental health challenges was when we had the pandemic and everybody had to be quarantined.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I know for me, that's when I started to like, cause I was, I had a lot going on at that time. I was in college. I'm still in college, but I
Mm-hmm.
was taking 5 classes at that time.
Mm-hmm.
And my mom, I remember we just found out that she had breast cancer,
Mm-hmm.
and so that was heavy on me because I'm not only trying to like finish these 5 classes, but I'm also now having to be like a caretaker to
Mm-hmm.
my mom, and that did a lot to me mentally, and really I don't know, that's when I faced like a dark time because I had to also be quarantined too.
Yes.
And so I went through a lot. I went through that as well as like my own mental health challenges. I feel like that's when like childhood trauma started to creep up on me, and
Mm-hmm.
like just things that I've dealt with that I've had to like go through therapy.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it was a battle, but I came out of it, and I think the thing that helped me was one, praying
Mm-hmm.
and journaling.
Mm-hmm.
And there were times when I had to like just go walk around the neighborhood, like I can't do this. I have to just free my mind some way. And therapy really helped
Mm-hmm.
me get through that time.
Therapy being.
Therapy, you know what? Like mental health profession, like mental health counseling.
Yes.
Um, I talk. She really helped me through that time, but also just journaling. I feel like journaling could be a form of therapy too.
Yeah. Yes, because when you speak of therapy, I actually do some things for my own mental health. I
Really.
do, I do, and I think it's very important.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things I had some challenges at one time because everybody, I think, at some point, through varying degrees, have challenges
Mm-hmm.
to your mind, and a lot of times stress and being overwhelmed
Overwhelmed,
or
yeah.
being overwhelmed can cause that and
Mm-hmm.
trigger you in some kind of way, or bring on some type of a feeling of being overwhelmed and not
Just
knowing what to do.
anxious, having
Yes.
anxiety.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's why it's important that like we or become self-aware of those
Hmm.
triggers
Yeah.
and then find ways to cope through that. Healthy coping mechanisms.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. So at one time I was going to school.
Mhm.
I was pastoring or trying to develop a church from the ground
Mhm.
up, and also being a father
Mhm.
and a husband
Mhm.
and working full time.
That's a lot.
And I was going to a school that was really designed for a university for people who really just come out of college.
Mhm.
But I was a working adult. So I would go to work and then I have to go to school sometimes from work and then go back to work after I went to school because the class might be in the middle of the day.
Mhm.
It wasn't really designed for me in my
Mhm.
situation. And one day I was just really overwhelmed. And so I called my grandfather and he helped me to process, what I was going through.
Mhm.
But one of the ways that I did finish school and got through all of that was I was running. I was running. I was running. And someone said, well, how you got time to run? And one of the ways that helped me with my mind was to be able to run and to clear my mind.
Mhm.
And
Exercising.
it,
Mhm.
it actually helped me with my mental clarity.
Mhm.
And it just helped me with my thinking and being able to approach all of the stresses that I had at that time.
So working out is your thing.
That's that's one of my things. That's
My
one of
thing,
my
I
things.
love to run, but I
Hmm.
love hiking.
Yeah, yeah,
Hiking is a form of like like a form of therapy, but it
yes.
helps me relieve stress because I'm
Hmm.
by myself. That's one thing I love to be by myself.
Yeah.
But I'll go to hiking and
Hmm.
I'll journal or I'll just sit there and just listen to music and
Hmm.
just be by myself.
Hmm. Yeah. So those are some therapies. But can you speak on some other things that are causing? I understand you said like the pandemic.
Hmm.
I think that really played a very bad the way that people dealt with it.
Hmm.
it was really bad for a lot of young people.
Mm-hmm.
Really, really bad, because a lot of young people are already into their phones,
Mm-hmm.
and their social interaction was not what it should be necessarily. And then you had to put them in
Mm-hmm.
isolation, and uh, you had some people who came forward and spoke on how that impacted them.
Mm-hmm.
Can you speak more about some of the specific ways that isolation impacted some people during the pandemic?
Because we weren't able to be around our loved ones. I remember, I think it was my mom's birthday. It was my mom's birthday. And we couldn't interact with our relatives because of, the pandemic and
Mm-hmm.
Corona. And so they had to drive by. And I appreciated like seeing my family like drive by or they'll come to the doorstep. And then she was high risk at the time too.
Uh-huh,
So she really
uh-huh.
couldn't be around family. Will interact closely with them. But I remember them driving by, and it's like it made me feel good. But I was like, I wish I could just hug my family.
Mm-hmm.
So I think isolation does something to a person mentally because it's like we need people to
Mm-hmm.
survive. I need my loved ones to survive.
Yes, yes. Even though you like being by yourself, you
Even yeah.
still you still want that occasional hug,
Mhm.
or that there's a certain level of
Mhm.
interaction you still need,
Right.
even though you naturally have a propensity to be by yourself.
Mhm.
And some people may not know this about me, but I can be by myself too.
I could be yeah.
But I love people. I love people, and I love being around people. But also, I like a balance. I do like some my alone time too.
Cause I feel like you
Uh,
can't really give people your best version of yourself if you don't take that time to be by yourself. Some me time. That's also what I tell people too.
hmm
Is to just take some me time for yourself, like practicing self care, like
hmm
taking yourself out to certain places or doing whatever makes you happy.
hmm
Just do that, and then that that way you could be like you can be better for the people around you.
hmm Yeah. So, so during the pandemic, you felt like the isolation caused some depression and
Mhm.
some anxiety
Mhm.
and dark feelings and dark thoughts,
Mhm.
and actually, I understand that suicides were
Yeah.
beginning to go up,
The
and
rates were very high
yeah.
during that time. And I will say that I did battle like suicidal thoughts because I think when a person, what I've learned from my experience dealing with the pandemic and being isolated, if a person doesn't deal with their issues, it could like really get dark. And it got dark for me.
hmm
Um, and I did have an attempt, and I'm glad that God just brought me out of it
hmm
because yeah, it got real dark.
Yes, yes,
Um,
yes,
yeah.
and you had to struggle and fight against, and God blessed you to overcome that.
Yeah.
And
And I would say too, like I was really like distant from God. Like I didn't really have. Oh man,
hmm yeah, come get it. hmm
that is deep.
Yeah.
Thanks. Yeah. Thanks.
hmm
Um. Uh. Okay.
It's okay. It's okay. And the beautiful thing is that you overcame.
Yeah.
And the enemy he seeks to steal,
Kill and
kill,
destroy.
and destroy. And the good thing is that God come that we might live. And I really had somebody recently to ask me, say, well, does conviction cause you to want to die, or does conviction cause you to want to kill yourself? The conviction of the Lord is not to cause you to want to die physically, but it's actually to cause you to want to live.
Yeah.
And whenever those thoughts are prevalent in your mind,
Mhm.
that's not God, that's the enemy.
Mhm.
And because sometimes people get the voice of God and the voice of the enemy confused with each other.
Yeah.
You know.
And I would say, transparently speaking, I did get far away from God and just my upbringing and what I was taught, I just lost myself like around that time,
Mm-hmm.
and I I went through dark times. I went through that dark time where I did attempt, and I struggled for a little bit after
Mm-hmm.
that moment. Um, but I just had to. I not you know how so I want to be I want to ask a question.
Mm-hmm.
When you say like when people are battling mental health, you say pray, but do you agree that you're supposed to go to therapy too, like a seek outside help, like mental health profession?
It depends. It depends. So there are some times where you can have the right spiritual counsel, and that spiritual counsel can be all you need.
Mm,
But if you, uh, there are times when you need some professional help. It's like a physician.
mm,
And Jesus said, they that are whole need not a physician. And so we don't discount physicians and people who have more medical knowledge and understanding, because sometimes the way that your healing may come is God actually have some things here that can bring about your help in your healing.
mm.
Um, Even when Jesus was dealing with a blind man and he come to open his eyes, do you know he made a medicine for his eyes? And it was made out of something special. It's spit and clay.
Wow.
Yeah, he made a medicine and he anointed the man's eyes. In fact, he used it, and after he washed, he said, "Well, how do you see?" He said, "I see men as trees." He anointed him a second time, and then he began to see clearer. And what God did was he used something natural to bring about the healing. And what I'm saying to you is simply this, is that I understand that some will say you need faith and faith alone. However, the scripture does say faith without works is dead. And sometimes what God uses is not only his words, but he also uses a medicine, or he uses some substance to bring about the change that's needed. And sometimes a person's mental health is because of an imbalance in their mind.
Mm,
And the mind is made up of fluids and chemicals, and there's cerebral fluids. There's the a chemical balance that's supposed to be there. And so I'm saying that to say this. Um, we don't speak against a person who has a pancreatic issue and they need insulin because their pancreas isn't producing the insulin. We say, go take some insulin. You see,
mm.
when a person's blood pressure is out of order, there's blood pressure medicine to help regulate that. But what if a person's mind was having a dysfunction or disorder and there was an imbalance there? There's actually physicians that are able to help to know when perhaps a person may need a balance for their mind as well. So, yes, there is a time when you may need a physician for the mind.
I agree.
Does that make sense?
I agree with that.
Mm-hmm.
I think that it goes well. For me, it went outside of like just praying and going to therapy. I had a moment where I had to take antidepressants for my mental health.
Mm-hmm.
It helped, but I do think that that plays a factor into having a stable mind and mental
Mm-hmm.
health.
Yes, yes, yes. And the other thing about it is in that you have. Here's what I advise those, especially to people of faith and people who are in the church and in the body of Christ. This is what I advise to people in the faith: is that if you did feel the need to have some outside help
Mm-hmm.
and go to a physician or what have you, don't. I would encourage them also to have spiritual counsel, because part of what you need is spiritual.
Mm-hmm.
Part of what you need. I'm not saying that there may be some other needs that need to be met, but to have the right balance, because some of what your mind need is what is being fed.
Mm-hmm.
See, so sometimes what you're fed, what you feed into your mind, that actually can play a role in how your
Yeah,
mind
that affects it.
develops and how strong your mind is. For instance, if somebody's just feeding you negative, in fact, I think I saw your mom come in and she had something about negativity on her T-shirt.
Yep,
See,
sounds like my mom.
yeah, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So here's the thing about that is if somebody feeds you negative thoughts, you're around somebody just feeding you negative thoughts. You ain't this, you ain't that, or you'll never be this, or you'll never be that, or just
Or just them as a person, like them, their personality and
yes,
what they're dealing with, that can sometimes affect you too.
yes. And then you can begin to receive that,
Mhm.
and then next thing you know, you have a lot of negative thoughts. Well,
Mhm.
where you get it from? Somebody was feeding that to you.
Mhm.
You see what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I've dealt with that too, and I think that that also plays a role in like stable mental health is
Mm-hmm.
surrounding yourself with people that make you feel good,
Mm.
and just um, being mindful of your environment.
Yes, 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 yes. And so, the thing I say about that is this too. So, like, you can have somebody feed you negative, but you can also have somebody feed you positive and the thing that you need to be fed that will make you healthy and whole. And some it's about what you hear and what's going in, and in your mind and in your heart. See, so that's some of what I would say about that. So, so what are you thinking about as it pertains to how people should approach their struggle? What are some of the other ways you think that people should approach their struggle?
Like this, creating a safe space and reaching out and
Mm-hmm.
being aware of where you are, like mentally. I
Mm-hmm.
think that's, for me, it would be um, surrounding yourself, being aware of um, where you are and having conversations and like going to support groups or whatever you need. Um, Exercising, like we talked about,
Mm-hmm.
um, and a healthy diet too.
Ah,
Yeah.
diet.
Mhm.
So do
Mhm.
you think that has something to do with it too? What you
Absolutely.
eat?
What you are, when people say you are what you eat, I believe that because with me, I will notice a shift in my mental with based off of what I've eaten. So if I'm eating anything that's like terrible for me, drinking a lot of caffeine and eating fried foods or whatever, I could tell that with a shift with my mental health. And that's why I'm like, I need to eat a salad. I need to get around some fruits and vegetables.
You
Yeah.
need something clean, right?
Something clean, drinking a lot of water.
Uh-huh.
I think your diet plays a huge role in your mental health, your mental and emotional health.
Yes, yes. So see, these are some natural things that if people paid attention to and were self-aware, they would do those things, and it can help to keep them in a good level, at a
Mhm.
good level of health.
Mhm.
What about rest and sleep and?
That too.
Uh-huh.
Getting like, well, I'll get like 7 hours of sleep, but I think that getting rest, the proper rest that you need,
Mm-hmm.
will benefit your mental health too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. So let's see. So proper rest,
Mhm.
about 7 hours,
Mhm.
7 to 8.
If you can,
Now, what if somebody getting 11 hours of sleep?
I want to
11 to
be like
13.
them. I can't go past 7.
Well, the reason why I say that is if what if a person was getting 11 to 13 hours of sleep a day? Is that good or bad?
I Yeah, I think that would be bad though because if
Yeah.
you're sleeping too much,
Uh-huh.
then I'm
That
wondering.
could be a sign of a problem,
Mhm.
couldn't it?
Because I'm always
Yeah.
wanting to be sleep. I don't ever want to interact, but
Hmm.
sleeping is like that could be an unhealthy coping mechanism with
Yes.
sleeping too much.
Sleeping too much. Exactly. Exactly. So, you said the proper rest,
Mhm.
diet,
Diet,
exercise,
exercising,
proper water, and
water,
hydration.
therapy,
Therapy.
journaling,
Okay, journaling.
being around people that make you feel good
Yes.
about
Okay.
your mental health.
Very, very good. Very good. So, what are some of the other things that you, in your platform that you're working with and using? How are you helping others to overcome their challenges?
Well, one, I'm in college. I study sociology.
Yes.
And I graduate in a few months.
Okay.
Um, but I I talk about the things that people don't really like to talk about, and I think that's why people gravitate towards my platform so much is because
Mm-hmm.
I highlight those uh, things that people don't
Mm-hmm.
like the topics that people try to sweep under the rug.
I see.
That's what my platform is about.
I see. I see. I see. Anything you'd like to share with us that's come out in your platform?
The most recent one, I talked about grief.
Mm-hmm.
Because I just lost my grandfather just
Yes.
passed on Father's Day last year.
Mm-hmm.
And I shared this tip that my therapist told me about. She was like, I was crying, bawling, crying like 3 months into his passing. I'm just like, I thought 3 months down the line I would be happy. Like, I just thought that I would be healing from it, I would be in a better space. And she was like, it's only been 3 months. Like, give yourself some grace. He just passed away, and this is something that it was so sudden.
Yes.
And so you're having to adjust to losing a person that was like your protector.
Mm-hmm.
And so she said, have you ever been jet skiing? I was like, no.
Mm-hmm.
And she was like, well, think about when you're jet skiing and you're in the water, you're revving the engine up, you're so excited to just be on the jet skis, and all of a sudden, you're in the middle of the ocean with no land near for miles. And so you're trying to figure out, how am I going to get back to this dock safely? Because you're in the middle of the ocean and there's things under the water that could really take you out, but you have to figure out how to get back to the dock. That's the same with grief and mental health. You're going to have your bad days where you're like, this sucks. But then you
Mm-hmm.
have good days too,
Mm-hmm.
where you're working out and doing all the things we talk about, journaling,
Mm-hmm.
eating healthy, and all of that. And both of those are valid, and it doesn't take away from your healing process.
Mm-hmm.
You have to understand that you're grieving,
Mm-hmm.
and you have to just take it one day at a time and figure it out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that's been advice that I have to take every day, because
Mm-hmm.
when it comes to grief, it's just like I have bad days,
Mm-hmm.
but I have good days too, and
Mm-hmm.
I should. Both of those are valid. Both of those feelings are valid.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And all of there's a time for different things, and some things are natural, and you may go through some things that you might feel unnatural, but it actually is natural.
Mm-hmm.
Like at one time, part of your grief, you thought that in 3 months you should be, back to yourself, so
Mm-hmm.
to speak.
Mm-hmm.
But you had some information to help you to understand that you actually need more time than that.
Mm-hmm.
You need more time than that. And so grief is a natural part of life. And even on the spiritual side, uh, people may try to criticize people for having grief
Mm-hmm.
and say, well, you should be strong,
Well,
don't
tough it out,
cry, don't
yeah.
cry. You may have people around you that says, don't cry. But really, the scripture even teaches that God will wipe away tears from my eyes, and He's going to take away pain, no more death, and none of these type of things. But the reality to that is that there is a time to cry, and that time is while we are here, and we're going to experience some grief and pain.
But I feel like we all should allow those feelings to come up,
Yes,
because I feel like that's what talking about grief.
yes.
That's just something that I've noticed in the beginning. Like, I was suppressing my emotions because I'm like, I don't want to feel sad, I don't want to
Mm-hmm.
cry. But it
Mm-hmm.
just got worse. And then
Mm-hmm.
that's when I just had the realization that we have to feel our emotions in order to heal, in order to like move forward.
Yes. Rather than suppressing, you should allow it to flow and go through it the way
Mhm.
that you should, and express, those emotions the way that actually God made you to do. Because the reason why we cry is because we feel,
Mhm.
and actually it's a natural process.
Right.
It's a natural
It
process.
is a
God
natural process.
made us in that way to where we have these different emotions and we do these different things because God made us that way.
Mhm.
And it's
Emotional beings.
yes,
We're emotional
yes.
beings.
In fact, when Jesus even came to the grave of Lazarus after he had been dead for 4 days, he wept.
Mm.
He wept. So it is a natural thing that people do, And sometimes people try to tell you not to do that when actually it's time to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And so sometimes when you're dealing with grief, you do need to be around the right people who will help you to grieve
Yep.
rather than to help you to suppress your grief, because the suppression of the grief is actually going to cause more problems
It's gonna
than
show,
solve.
yeah,
Yeah,
it's
you're
gonna
not going
show
to
up in
solve.
other areas of your
Yes.
life, and you're gonna become more. It's gonna be more negative feelings like anger and more. I mean, you're gonna be sad, but it could get worse with like depression and everything.
Hmm.
So it's important to like feel our emotions when we grieve.
Yes. You've experienced some you've experienced some differences in different types of challenges.
Mm-hmm.
So you just spoke about grief. Have you dealt with depression as well?
Mm-hmm.
And so, what's the difference between? Can you explain the difference between grief and depression?
Um, For me, I feel like they go hand in hand
Hmm.
because when we're grieving, one of the things that my therapist taught me about is the stages of grief. You're gonna have anger, then you're gonna have um, times where what's the word? You just not accepting of it. You're
Hmm.
gonna have moments of sadness, and then moments of it. Well, you have the end result, which is acceptance.
Hmm.
And so I feel like during your grieving process, I've heard that it doesn't get easier. You just learn how to cope with it.
Yes.
But you do have moments of depression and sadness.
Hmm.
But it's important to be aware of that and allow it to flow through you, but also try to find other coping mechanisms that
Hmm.
could help reduce those feelings, those sad feelings.
Yes. 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 And so what are some of the other things that you've worked with others with? You got grief, you got depression. What about anxiety?
Oh yeah, I have
Uh-huh.
anxiety.
Uh-huh.
I have anxiety, and social anxiety.
Hmm.
Um, but I do talk about anxiety and how it could show up in any time. Anxiety is just a feeling that comes when we experience certain parts of life. So that could be if you have social anxiety or if you have moments of PTSD,
Hmm.
which is post traumatic stress disorder, when you're in a situation and it's like anxiety is so bad. It feels like my heart is about to come out my chest.
Yeah.
But I do have um, methods that have helped me, like the 5 4 3 2 1 method. Have you heard of that?
Let's speak on it.
So the 5 4 3 2 1 method is a grounding exercise that helps you focus your mind. It shifts your mind to be more focused on the present moment. So it's
Hmm.
5 things you could see, 4 things you can touch, 3 things you can hear, 2 things you can smell, and 1 thing you can taste.
Hmm. Hmm. So you're actually bringing your senses to be more aware of where you are right
Hmm.
now, rather than being in some fictitious or
Whatever
this
your
other place.
thoughts,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. And so it's really bringing your thoughts back to, okay, here I am,
Hmm.
and this is where we really are.
Hmm.
Because one of the things I think about anxiety is you have this fear of this unknown, and all of these thoughts are swimming in your head,
Hmm.
and that's where your anxiety is coming from. Okay, you don't know what to expect, you don't know
Hmm.
what's next, and you're thinking this and you're thinking that, and this is about to happen and that's about to happen, and sometimes none of that stuff is about to happen,
Hmm.
and
It's
all
worrying
this
about
fear.
past experience
Uh-huh.
or like future. Like you worry about the future, or you worry about the past, but you're not focused on the present.
You're right. Right.
So with that method, it just keeps you
Hmm.
focused. Another one I do.
Can you repeat that? The five.
Oh, 5 things you could touch, 4 things you can smell. Well, hold on. 5 things you can smell, 4 things you could touch, 3 things that you can hear, 2 things you could smell, and 1 thing you can taste.
Yes. 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 So when was the last time you had to use that?
Just yesterday. I had to do it
Ah!
yesterday because I was at work and it was just a lot of people.
Uh-huh.
And I'm a butcher at Publix. And so
Yeah.
I'm always interacting with people. But for some reason, yesterday, it was just too many people. And
Mm-hmm.
so I had to do the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 method. Or I'll do the 3, 3, 3. It's like three things you could touch, three things that you could smell,
Mm-hmm.
and do three breathing exercises.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so I carry essential oils in my pocket,
Mm-hmm.
like soft eucalyptus or peppermint smells,
Mm-hmm.
and I just put it on my wrist and I smell it, or I'll play I Spy with things you can see,
Mm-hmm.
and I'll um, name three things that I could see and three things that I could smell, and
Mm-hmm.
it brings me back to where I am, like the present moment.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It
Yeah.
helps.
It helps.
Hmm.
Okay. Good. 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 All right. So very good. So we talked about um, depression, grief, anxiety,
Hmm.
and you mentioned a little bit about PTSD.
Hmm.
PTSD is post-traumatic
Traumatic stress
stress
disorder.
syndrome. And can you speak a little bit about that?
So PTSD is a post-traumatic stress disorder, and it basically is like a form of anxiety. You get anxiety based off of something that you've already experienced.
Mm-hmm.
So for example, say if it was something that sudden that happened to you, and it's similar to, like, say it's something in the past that happened,
Mm-hmm.
and then you experience something now that triggers that memory, that situation that happened,
Mm-hmm.
then um, that could trigger like post traumatic stress disorder.
Mm-hmm. And what are some of the symptoms of that, or can can you speak on some of the symptoms of that? Okay, well, this is that particular thing, or perhaps could be that particular thing. Can you speak on that?
Yeah, I like anxiety. You get anxiety, heart palpitations.
Mm-hmm.
You can completely disassociate with PTSD. I've had that moment where I disassociated, not really being focused on
Mm-hmm.
what's going on. I'm just like in my own little bubble.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it can cause, yeah, that's pretty like stress, anxiety, and you, for me, disassociation.
But the reason for that is it's whereas you could have other mental challenges, but the reason for the PTSD is because of an event from the past,
Mm-hmm.
and then you're triggered by something in the present that reminds them of the past,
Right.
and they feel like they're there again in that
Mm-hmm.
situation, and they
Basically.
begin to have those manifestations.
Mm-hmm.
And so, what are some of the coping things that people can do to overcome those type of the PTSD? What is are the coping mechanism any different from the others or are they the same?
It just depends on that person and what works well for them. I
Mm.
know for me, like I said, essential oils, my best friend.
Mm-hmm.
Or I'll just walk away for a second, get some fresh air,
Mm-hmm.
um, and just be by myself. I'll probably say a little prayer
Mm-hmm.
and just take a moment and just be away, and then I'll come back.
Mm-hmm.
Because sometimes being in an environment that could really cause you to just shut down, and
Mm-hmm.
so it's best to just walk away, be by yourself, get your thoughts together, do whatever you do in that moment, and then come back.
Mm-hmm. I see. I see.
Have you ever experienced PTSD?
Ah, I don't think so. I don't.
Like a moment where you're just like overwhelmed in that moment and you just had to step away.
Well, with thinking of PTSD in that you had a traumatic experience um, to trigger, I don't know that I have that. Um, that I've had a experience that has triggered me back to a time in my past.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that I've had that, but I have had times where I've had to step away from things,
Mm-hmm.
step back, and in fact, I even try to even tell people even now that sometimes you're in relationships with people and you're having a time where you probably need to pause, and sometimes people they need to pause where they are and come back to that particular situation at a better time, at a better state of mind. because even in relationships sometimes people get in a bad state of mind
Mm-hmm.
and they begin to say things that they shouldn't say
Mm-hmm.
and do things that they shouldn't do, and they really need to pause
Mm-hmm.
and step away and then come back with a clearer mind and and pause on their sayings. And because sometimes people say things that they shouldn't say, they need to pause.
Mm-hmm.
They need, you remember
Having
that.
emotional intelligence to step away.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
When you need to just step away and get your thoughts back together because you're really going to a bad place in your
Mm-hmm.
mind, and you need to pause on that. You need
Yeah.
to pause on that and come back so that you don't have to have a lot of apology about things you said that
Cause yeah.
you were really in a bad state of mind when you said it.
Mm-hmm.
You
And
know.
sometimes you don't mean it. Sometimes it's the way that you say it, but that speaks to stepping away so that you
Hmm.
can gather your thoughts so that you don't, you know, lash out or
Yes.
say something that you don't mean because words hurt and you can't take it back.
Yes, yes. And the reality of it is, I know that the scripture says that out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speak.
Mm-hmm.
However, I will say that when you're in a bad state of mind, sometimes you're not yourself at certain times.
Mm-hmm.
You understand what I'm saying?
Yes.
In that anger has consumed you, and so you spoke out of a place of anger rather than a place of peace, and so you've been transitioned in your mind to another place,
Mm-hmm.
to where you meant it when you said it because of the position that you was in,
Mm-hmm.
and it came from your heart when you said it.
Mm-hmm.
However, your heart wasn't in a good place, and your mind wasn't either. And that's why you you really should have paused
Yep.
and came back to that conversation or come
Mm-hmm.
back to that person so you can actually be in a good mental place as you have those particular conversations.
I agree.
Hmm. Hmm. You've experienced some of that too,
I
where
have.
yeah.
I've been on both ends though,
Hmm.
where well I can take accountability and say there's some times where I should have stepped away,
Uh-huh.
had some emotional intelligence, stepped away, got my
Uh-huh.
thoughts together, and then came back. But I still have those moments where I should think before I speak. Sometimes I don't. Sometimes my,
Should. I
you
mean,
know,
now let me ask you a question. When is a time when you should speak before you think? Tell me when that time is.
speak before you think.
Yeah, let me get my pad so I can. When should you
That's not
speak?
smart.
That's not smart. No, it's not. It's never a good idea to really speak before you think.
Yeah.
But those times happen though, where you're being short circuited
Mhm.
by your mind is, and so your mind is short circuiting your thinking, and
Mhm.
anger can short circuit you,
Mhm.
and depression and some of these mental conditions can actually cause you not to be thinking the best
Mhm.
and cause you to do some things without the proper thinking.
I agree.
Hmm. Yeah. And then the next thing you know, you said something. I wasn't thinking, and my mouth kept moving.
I gotta do a lot of apologizing. Some
Yes.
things it's like I can apologize, but it's not gonna do much because I said something out of like out of in the moment. But
Hmm.
I've also been on the flip side of that too,
Yes.
where a person should have moved away, stepped away, and
Hmm.
then came back.
Hmm. And so they may have said some things or done some things out of anger, and you was on the receiving end of that.
Mhm.
And so, how did you cope with that?
Man.
So how do you cope with that when you're receiving something that's really taking you to a bad place? Because sometimes you can't. You, you like to control your environment, but sometimes you're in the presence of somebody that try to,
Try to take over.
yeah, and sometimes maybe even take you to a bad place.
Mhm.
And so how do you cope with that? Or how can you overcome that? How do you do it? I can give some advice on that, but how do you do that?
Well, nobody's perfect and you're
Mm-hmm.
gonna make mistakes. So sometimes you do have to walk away and you
Mm-hmm.
do have to give it some days, some hours or whatever and then come back. But some stuff can't be taken back. Like you
Mm-hmm.
just have to remove certain people when it comes to, when they say something or they intentionally harm you
Mm-hmm.
verbally.
Mm-hmm.
Um
Mm-hmm.
but I think just being mature about the situation, moving away, stepping away, then coming back and having a mature conversation.
Mm-hmm. I know you did bring up emotional intelligence,
Mm.
and sometimes you have to acknowledge that Sometimes people don't have that. They don't. Others don't have it.
Hmm.
You know, while you might develop it for yourself, others may not have it.
That's very true.
And so sometimes you have to kind of understand where a person is coming from, and they may be coming from a place where they don't actually have what you might have.
Hmm.
And
That
what?
sucks sometimes though. Like being the, I'll be honest, being the bigger person and having to
Mm-hmm.
understand, but you sometimes you
Listen,
really
that you talk
have
about
to.
being the bigger person. Look at it, how small you are.
I
The
don't.
bigger person. But I know what you mean. I just,
Yeah, I have to be the big. I mean, I have
mm-hmm.
to be the bigger person in some situations.
Mm-hmm.
It sucks though because you would want everybody to be kind of on the same level with emotional intelligence, but some
Yeah.
people just don't.
You know, and here's what I try to help people to understand sometimes is if you know you're dealing with a baby, would you expect them to be on your level?
No,
You understand? So
absolutely.
sometimes people they're in an adult body, but their emotional intelligence is that of a baby
Mhm.
at times. And so when you can acknowledge that, then you can give more grace.
Mhm.
You can give more grace and say, you know, maybe they just don't know how to talk to me. And you can because sometimes you are dealing with a situation where that person they just don't have that thing.
They don't get it.
They don't get it
Mhm.
exactly. And then what you can do is you can excuse them rather than take it personal and take
Mhm.
it allow that to take you to a dark place. As you begin to be healthy in your mind,
Mhm.
you can actually not allow people to take you to a place of being unhealthy in your mind because they might be unhealthy in their mind. They might be lashing out at you, and if you let them, they can take you to an unhealthy place.
Do you feel like that comes with time or just experiencing the same thing from different people over and over again?
Yes. So,
Just being more understanding with
mhm,
what people. Because I know I'm still young, I'm 25, so I have a lot of growing to do.
uh,
And there's certain moments when I do get upset and I'm not as understanding,
mhm,
but me asking you, is that something that you just had to learn and just get
yes,
older?
yes, and that's a growing thing, which is
Mm.
appropriate for our audience growing in grace. You grow to certain things, and you grow your patience. And in your patience, you grow your understanding for people, and especially as you deal with different people, you can actually begin to see who you're dealing with at times.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because like through experience, you can begin to see, okay, this I'm experiencing this, and I've experienced this before,
Mm-hmm.
and this is that type of person, and I know to be patient, and I know to be forgiving, and know that okay, this person may not have the emotional intelligence that they need to have, and they don't know what to say to me at this point and at this time, and that's why they're saying what they're saying, and that's why they're being offensive,
Mm-hmm.
and so don't take offense. They just don't know what to say.
And that's when you extend grace to that
Yes,
person.
yes, yes, and
Yeah.
you almost, and at times, sincerely, at times, you can get to a place where even though they said something offensive, you can act like they didn't say anything.
Whew. Yeah, I got it.
You can act
Yeah.
like they didn't say anything because it's okay. And they just coming from a place of maybe some ignorance. You understand? And
Mm.
so you almost act like they didn't say anything.
So that goes to the point of not everything deserves a reaction.
100%. 100%. And sometimes that's how you keep your peace
Mm.
and your right frame of mind and stability in your mental health is sometimes you just got to let it pass.
You do have to let it just roll off your
Just let
shoulder.
it pass. And I've said this before to some of the congregation. And I've said this before. Even my wife and I, we have peace in our home. But even my wife and I, sometimes my wife says something and it rubs me a certain way. But I've learned now that I don't respond to everything. I don't respond to everything. And not that I say, because somebody asked me, you mean tell me you ignore your wife? No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that sometimes my wife makes a comment and she's not really asking me a question, but she's made a comment. But the
Mm.
comment rubs me a certain way.
Mm.
And the comment is not a question. I don't have to respond to it. And I can just decide, you know what? I'm not responding to that. because I may have thoughts that are bad that come, and I
Mm-hmm.
have a response that I know if I say this, it's not going to be good.
It's gonna make the situation worse.
Yes, yes, yes. And so I've learned to say, instead of saying that, don't say nothing.
You gotta pick your battles. That's one thing my mom has taught me.
Yes.
Just in life, she told me, she was like, every decision you make, whether
Hmm.
good or bad, you're gonna have to live with it. So
Hmm.
sometimes you're gonna have to pick your battles when it comes to people and protect your peace and your mental health.
Yes, yes, yes.
Yeah.
So there is a way where we can actually have a good mind.
Mm-hmm.
And the Lord has come to give us love, power. You know the rest of that.
Love.
You don't know the rest of that.
I don't.
God,
I'm sorry.
I might need to get you to come on back to back to church. Love, power, and a sound.
Mine.
Yes,
Okay.
yes, yes.
Okay.
You get 2 points.
Okay. I got something.
Say again.
I said I got something, so
Yeah,
that's
yeah, yeah,
good.
yeah. Love, power, and a sound mind. And He wants us to have that. He wants us to have that. So that's what this conversation is about: is mental challenges. And you've had some,
Mm.
I've had some, and anybody of a certain age has probably had some type of a challenge
Mm.
to varying degrees. And so,
Do you think that it's more with the younger generation, with people that battle mental health challenges, or more of the older, like people my age, from maybe say 18 to 26,
well,
27?
let me ask you a question. At what age did you start having some challenges?
I was young,
Mm-hmm.
but when it started to affect me, I was probably about 20.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Mm-hmm.
when I knew I had to get some
Get some help.
help.
Get some help. There are some people who have had some challenges, but they never got professional help. You understand?
Mm-hmm.
And there are some people who started with their challenges in their teenage years. You see. So, and then there are some people who are up in age and they're dealing with challenges even now, but they've never really addressed them appropriately. They've never addressed them appropriately. And actually, they could have a better quality of life if they would just address the issue appropriately. And rather than try to suppress, they need to bring it to the light appropriately,
Mm-hmm.
and get the proper help that they need. And it's not always going to a therapist, but everybody needs somebody.
That's
Everybody
very
needs
true.
somebody. And sometimes people are trying to deal with this stuff in the dark.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the wrong place, especially if you're dealing with depression
Mm-hmm.
and certain other mental challenges. Going to the dark, you're going to go deeper to the dark.
Mm-hmm. Or just allowing it to get that far.
Yes.
Because I think with certain people, if you like I told you about being more self-aware with your
Mm-hmm.
mental and emotional health, if you see signs like I'm sleeping more, or
Mm-hmm.
I'm not eating,
Mm-hmm.
or I'm being more distant from the people that I normally talk to,
Yes.
then that's when you know, like, I need to get some help.
You need to
I
get
need
some
to
help.
reach out, or whatever I can do to not allow it to get worse.
Yeah, and having negative thoughts and
Mm-hmm.
thoughts of self harm
Mm-hmm.
and those type of things. At that point, you got to know that if you just embrace loneliness and embrace the dark, and you're pulling the shades down in your room and covers are over the windows,
I've been there.
where
I'm
you don't even want the light that would come through the,
Yeah, I don't need.
you already got shades and curtains. Now you got to
Yep.
put a
I just need
you
to
don't
be
want no
dark.
light,
Yeah.
all darkness.
Your phone on silent. You don't want to talk.
Yeah,
Yeah.
done blocked everybody.
Mhm.
Uh, yeah, something's not happening right,
Mhm.
in our minds
Mhm.
to take us to that place, So, um, this is a good conversation.
Mhm.
In fact, I'm enjoying talking to you.
Me too.
It's been a while since we talked and I
I
seen
know.
you,
Mhm.
but I'm glad to see you today.
I'm glad to see you too. Every time we talk, it's always a great conversation,
Yes.
and we always end up in ducked off. We'll start off, hey, how you doing? How you doing? Well, this and this and that. We just start talking on and on.
Yes.
So I felt so comfortable coming on here.
Yes, and I'm glad you felt comfortable because You can talk to me.
I know.
You know, you can talk to me,
I know.
and I'm glad for this conversation because it also brings awareness to our greater audience.
Mhm.
And as we get ready to close today, I do appreciate our audience coming to be with us to have this conversation. And I think it's something that we all need to hear,
Mhm.
you know, and because people are dealing with these issues in silence, they're not bringing them to the light
Mhm.
so that they can be properly addressed so that you can have that abundant life.
Mhm.
Because some people are there existing, but they're not having that abundant life,
Mhm.
you know. And the
Or
Lord,
they're here, but they're not present.
yeah, they're just existing. They're not living the life that God really wants them to live,
Mhm.
you know. And so, do you have any closing remarks?
Yeah, I think that I wanted to whoever's watching to prioritize your mental health and prioritize yourself. And when you feel that things are getting dark for you, get some help.
Mm-hmm.
And know that you are loved, you are appreciated, and this world would be different if you didn't exist.
Mm-hmm. And the Lord loves you, and the Lord wants you to be. The scripture says, "I wish above all that thou mayest prosper, be in health, as your soul prospers." And that health is not just for your pancreas,
Mm-hmm.
it's not just for your heart, it's also for your mind. He wants you to have a love, power, and a strong mind.
Mm-hmm.
And we're here to help. And the Growing in Grace podcast is here to help you to grow in the different aspects of your life and to help you to have awareness of when somebody may need some help. You know, because it may not be you, it may be a loved one that you
Mm-hmm.
see that's going through some of the things that you've heard about today. They may have PTSD, they may have anxiety, they may have
Depression.
depression, they may be experiencing grief, dealing with loss.
Mm-hmm.
And is there another one that I missed?
There are more common mental health
Mm-hmm.
disorders such as bipolar or
Yes,
personality disorder, schizophrenia,
yes,
even eating disorder is a mental
yes.
health disorder.
Yes, yes. And so we didn't really address all of it. This is not
Mm-hmm.
all encompassing, but there be some other conversations that we can have as well. We've also talked about some therapy, some
Mm-hmm.
things that you can do to cope, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and everybody needs some coping mechanisms.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody needs some coping mechanisms. You're dealing with these different things, but some things is proper rest, proper sleep, proper hydration, proper food to eat.
Journaling,
Yeah.
being by yourself, self care,
Hmm. Exercise.
exercise.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes, yes,
church, coming to
yes.
church.
Yeah, you need the spiritual. You need
Mm-hmm.
the word of life. The word of God is the word of life, and
Mm-hmm.
that's what you need. That's what you need. And so I'm glad that you come to be with us today, and I hope you got something or took something from this conversation that may be able to help you in your life, or as you may have challenges. Maybe you're not haven't had any challenges, or maybe you haven't had any severe mental health challenges
Mm-hmm.
yet. If there hasn't been a storm in your life, wait a while. There may be one brewing, and you will need some of the things that you may have heard today. I want you to know that we care for you, we love you, and I love you.
I love you as well.
And I want you to come back again to another Growing in Grace podcast. We would like for you to like, share, subscribe so you get notifications of when these podcasts are airing. Additionally, you can let us know of a conversation that you would enjoy to hear about. So you can call me 423-316-8011. Again, if there's something that you would like for us to discuss, a topic that you would like for us to discuss, give me a call. 423-316-8011. We love you. We appreciate you. This is a serious topic today. Uh, Come on back to the next one. God bless you.
Thank
Good
you.
job, Angelica.
Thank you.
You did good.
She's gonna be a good therapist.
Yeah.
She gonna, girl, you stay in school, but
Yeah. You made one mistake.
What?
I took that medicine.
One mistake.
What?
You didn't bring the box at first. You know when you